Hello, Adrian. So good to have you here. I'm really excited to chat with you
Andreena,
today.
hi, greetings to Canada. It's amazing
Yes,
having this conversation today.
yes, from me being in Toronto and you being over in Bali, this is really dope and exciting that we get to have this conversation. So
Yes.
let's jump right in. So the first question that I have for you, um, going from being an editor, coming from the background with having an opera singer mother and a conductor father, and later becoming an award-winning film editor yourself, how did an early immersion in storytelling and artistry shape your ability to understand human narratives of love and relationships today?
That's a very, very beautiful question, actually. I have never been asked. And I love to answer that. I think, life is relationships, relationships is life. I always start in trainings or in seminars or in particular processes with people with a little exercise where I bring people into the awareness that through the interaction and through the connection with other human beings, we fulfill purpose and passion and everything we are, prosperously into our lives. If you imagine a human being not being connected to anybody in the sense of it's not just intimately on love, we're talking just the world as it works, there is this tribal instinct in us human beings to be very, very, focused on one another in how we can interact and help each other. So I think from the perspective of film and television and storytelling, I was really lucky in my 20s and 30s, having worked with directors and with filmmakers who are very, how can I say, almost, yeah, almost key focused on bringing human nature to the fullest into the limelight of their movies. And for example, a director I worked for many years with is Edgar Wright, and there is a German trilogy that is very famous with the name Heimat or the Heimat, and which Homeland is the translation. And it tells a family story over 2 or 3 generations. That's an example. And generally, love stories and stories of love and breakups and heartache and healing heart have always all my childhood and my youth already really really intrigued me, and going very early through my own really big story of loving my first partner and boyfriend really extremely deeply. I have to say I'm really really lucky that I had him as my first longer term partner. As much it was difficult because he was bisexual. He is, in an artistic field in Germany, very high up. So he had a career that ultimately limited us to have the relationship we wanted because he chose his career being in his early 20s compared to staying with me, being pregnant with our first child. And I was mom very early, so I was a single mom then very early, and I became really in this whirlwind of 2, 3, 4, 5 years in experiencing passionate love, being pregnant, a big breakup, becoming a mom, and then entering the film industry in the age of 19, having a little boy of 1 year, on my side. Um, that shaped me, and in all my 20s, when I engaged very heavily in being involved in the film industry, I really had the opportunity to observe, human stories from a very, very interesting perspective. And luckily, at that time, beautiful stories were told. Amazing movies have been made all over the world. And then there was one movie that really kicked it off, and that's The Piano, that played and plays in New Zealand. And this New Zealand landscape and the New Zealand flavor and Jane Campion's directory really, really shaped me, and it guided me to New Zealand. And I end up in the age of 29, 30, moving to New Zealand and becoming a New Zealander ultimately, and later having more children in New Zealand, having more love stories and breakup stories to tell. And really, the love coaching and the love guidance is not one I decided on by being a coach or being a counselor. Yes, I studied psychology for a little while. I did a counseling paper. I knew about that. But then it was neurolinguistic programming. It was all these studies, all these certifications, all these many, many things I learned, beside the fact that I was then very active in arts. And I did in the university in Auckland, I did a degree as arts manager and had a diploma in curation for arts projects. And that was really, really combined with film, some sort of my goal ultimately to go back into this industry after being a healer and being, very, very involved in natural health and holistic medicine and the rest of it. The vibrational function of anything that nature brings was always my deep story. It was always, the flowers, the plants, the images, the art, and here we come to this wonderful story of being also a psychic and a visionary. I read through elements, cards nowadays is because the variety of tarot and oracle cards that are beautiful and really, really, really wholesome is amazing. If these cards wouldn't be there, then I would probably still do what I did 20 or 30 years ago, that I take plant medicines or flowers or objects that people bring in my space to tell them about, other people talk out of coffee cups, or something like that. So I could probably have developed all sorts of medias to read through into people's lives. And the ability for that was always some sort of in me, but never refined and matured enough. And I had the calling in my mid-40s when I really discovered that this was a path, not just a hobby or something. I was told intuitively that in my later years, I would become highly intuitive and highly psychic. And I only then had the permission to really, really express it and perform it as a trade and as a service to others. And a lot of training has happened over the years and a lot of healing and transformation. And I guess it was COVID and going through COVID all on my own that I was living on my own at the time. My children were in their places. I had, just divorced from a very, very important marriage of 13 years. And I had survived ovarian cancer. My story is already portrayed in other ways, in interviews and also in written documents. But for me, ultimately, it was that big changing point to enter back that space where my own story and my holistic something of experience, becomes integrated. So I'm back now to the beginning of your question, that, how has storytelling and my relationship to these media of film and television and writing added to becoming a love coach. And nowadays I do make movies, documentaries about love, and I interview people regularly. And core relationship to Mars Venus writer and author John Gray, I interviewed and have created a beautiful documentary with Dr. Bruce Lipton. And the idea was ultimately, and still ultimately, is to produce one big documentary, one movie that would covers all my experience of 20, 30 years as a kind of legacy movie, really speaking about the evolution of love and relationships and sexuality in our societies at this very time. And that will probably then, when you ask me more about the academy I'm creating at the moment, really be answered how important it actually really is to educate people about the deeper causes of what we're experiencing in many, many ways. There are lots of divorces, there are lots of breakups, there are lots of karmic relationships where people say they're ultimately not with the people they feel, love to, but they still feel very drawn in staying in these relationships because karmically something has to be, concluded. So, and for those who spiritually connect and know that their relationship is not just a love affair, but also a human experience that has a purpose for fulfilling, both parties, kind of, honor of life and love, then I think you have a very, very, very different perspective to how you live, relationships overall. So life is relationships. We would not be alive in the way human people and beings, experience themselves and others. Would we not choose to interact deeply? And those people who have very, what can I say? Not very few, but have maybe not the ability to open up and be so connected to others, have a very, very different human experience altogether, and often with themselves and in the way how they live as well. So I think the beauty of relationship and mastering them is to have a much better life. And ultimately, when we actually look back at the end of our lives, it's usually that relationships we are looking back to that have created the value. So thank you for this question. There are lots of stories and lots of beautiful love stories, and I love great movies and I love great love stories. And more than anything else, Andreena, I love seeing great love stories in our human evolution at the moment. And quite frankly, there are many. I do not know many really great love stories at this point of our time. And it's not that it's not possible, but humanity is very confused around love and relationships. And I think it's time to unravel and, detect what is actually really the deeper cause for this in-depth pain people experiencing because they cannot find the level of love and fulfillment they're actually seeking truly on their soul path.
And I love that you mentioned that, and you also touched on, the mortality and some of you have mentioned before and spoken openly about some of your own health battles. So my
Yeah.
question is, how did confronting your own mortality reshape your definition of love and intimacy, not just with others, but with yourself?
Oh, very, very deeply. And quite honestly, this is almost like an invitendo giving you an answer because when you are this ill, you lose the ability to be available for another person's deeper, intimate needs. That ended my relationship. My husband did not get his needs met because I was absolutely deeply self-focused in surviving, and I choose not to be operated. I did it all naturally. I went to Bali. I had treatment here in a very, very secluded environment, very, very experimentative and risky on another side. It could have backfired badly. A lot of people try natural, therapies for ailments like cancer and fail. And I was on this mission. I was on this mission, and 9 months into my healing story, I thought I had my man on my side, and he would actually honor me for having done this, great work of, staying alive. And in that hero story, I had to learn that I failed as a lover, that I failed as a wife, that I failed as a person being deeply available for his needs and his burnout and his battle to say every day, I will help her, I will keep this family together, and the rest of it. So what it did lead me to, Andreena, was this incredible journey of going into all these woundings, because the first thing that of course popped up And that was my fourth, divorce. I want to be really honest. Over 40 years, I have been married 4 times. So I was facing, I had 2 short-term marriages that almost were not counting in my reference, because I had the pattern in my 20s, 30s to marry everybody I had a relationship with, because I thought, let's get this done. We are committed. Let's, how cool is this? And ultimately to differentiate between the legal act of making a commitment legally versus being committed in a relationship on an emotional and spiritual and karmic level. Now I know, all these years later, is a completely different story. So would I get legally married nowadays? Would I meet the man of my dreams in this period of my life? I would probably do very, very, very different, discoveries about the process than I did when I was younger. But telling you why I'm answering all this, it was my fourth real, or fifth actually, really sincere breakup. Kids involved, homes involved, all these externalized, image, identity, my profession was very, very linked to being married as a love coach. People expect you to be in a great relationship. So that fell apart and that was ending. So my self-image and my outer image had to change. And I had to fight the battle of being not criticized, but certainly questioned. How do you think you do this? Why did you fail? Then I had the idea of creating, courses and coaching programs for couples where one partner has cancer and the other is struggling. And I learned a lot about that. I actually created a draft, a script for a book about my story. The Cancer Lover is called. And I have that half manuscript ready and the pitch ready for another publishing house. I'm not sharing who has received it initially. It was actually a competition, and I wasn't chosen to be, one of the winners. So that's fine. Ever since I learned that the journey, when you have this level of health issues, to really finding out what love truly is for you, then you learn very, very quickly that not having loved yourself, or not having been really, really clear in the healing of your core relationships, let's say karmically with your parents or ancestors, or old relationships related to maybe not so good experiences around sexuality and intimacy. So anything that some sort of still energetically is in our system and holds us, in that field of incompletion, ultimately is one of the reasons, the many reasons we are getting sick. So I had to really learn to break this down, Andreena. I had to really understand I have a lot of good skill sets to be a coach for others, but hold on a minute, that level of fear of abandonment or fear of being left in a very, very crucial time of my life, where I actually want the man on my side, not having this person on my side anymore, what it brings up is actually the greatest invitation for me to now learn how to master my life and my existence and my relationship to love and intimacy in a very, very, very different manner. And have I been back in a full-time or in a committed relationship ever since? No, I haven't. It's 7 years now. And yes, I had lovers, and yes, I have men, I have deep relationships with, but I'm not committed in any relationship, at least at this stage. And what I really enjoy in this process, Andreena, is the opportunity to really see love and intimacy for what it truly is. And when we actually understand that love is vibrationally something so much deeper than physical, and so much more than, that sensory or sensual experience that we co-create in being with somebody, enjoying each other's, intimate interaction. So I think there is an incredible opportunity for so many new coaches, advisors, professionals, or whatever we want to call it, creatives. I think even for creatives, people who write, people who make movies, people who create songs and write lyrics, to really dive even deeper. And we know there are millions of love songs and beautiful poetry. And I'm German. I come from the culture of romance. I mean, my background is, you told it. My mom was an opera singer. My father, a musician conductor. He was involved in playing the biggest organs of Europe. He was an organist. He was also very involved in church music. So Bach, Mozart, Richard Wagner was some sort of flowing through our energetic field at home day and night. I grew up with this. So the depths of translating love and love feelings and love heartbreak or something into music and creative outlets is how I grew up. Nowadays I dance tango. Tango is that on an Argentinian level culturally. It's the songs about the love and the lost love and the heartbreaks. And so there's always in many cultures almost like a story or a narrative or a language, that's spoken and told that speaks about love so much deeper. But the love you learn through facing death is very, very existential and very deep and profoundly eye-opening, because there is, for me, this is everything is unfiltered, and with the ability now to be also, intuitive and psychic and visionary. I see everything. I look in somebody's, quantum field of relating to somebody, or I see this person, the way they portray themselves from a heart energetic level, and I can sense instantly, what is really, really integrated and what is not. And there's never a perfection in trainer. We never stop learning about love, and we never stop really, learn healing love, because there's always, something that renews the karmic contract with ourselves and others to go this evolution of harmonizing and healing and integrating these elements. And human love is the most powerful force in this universe. And not human love per se, love as a bigger love, but for us as humans to connect to greater love and to universal and human love is a very, very powerful thing. And I teach this. I was a oneness trainer. I worked for years as a trainer for the Oneness University, and that actually did get me to become a love coach, because the philosophy of oneness is that you heal your core relationships in order to awaken and enlighten spiritually. And I know now that this is true, because I had to almost die, in order to experience that. And the man I built this academy with at the moment, Miguel, had very similar experiences. He didn't have cancer, but he was 4 or 5 years ago very, very, very ill on his deathbed, ending up in a very complicated surgery in Belgium after living here for several years in Bali. And he shifted his directory after this experience very heavily in becoming very focused on helping people from a very sound and very, very secure and not structured, but really, really well spoken and well communicated place. And I have seen in the communication and the language around love also a lot of misuse and not good things, you know. And there are teachers and practitioners out there who are not to blame. They have just not done enough internal work or the work as professionals to really understand that holding boundaries and holding a quantum field of safety for inviting people speaking about love and their love lives and helping them to heal their love lives and ultimately to help them to becoming the lovers um, to life and to their partners as much as their desire is a real act
Yeah.
of service. You know, you have to learn the principles and the philosophy, and not just the philosophy of sharing love and teaching love and helping in love. It's an obligation, it's a responsibility we have as professionals to really understand that every single story, every single soul path is sacred, is unique, and deserves to be, you know, approached and helped and conducted and guided with absolute, you know, dignity. And this project, building a school for coaches to help people in love, is based on my calling to help that this communication is coming into the world, that we understand that out there is so much confusion and so much overlapping between certain, you know, understandings of, you know, dating. And, you know, love coaching has so many individual chapters. And where it gets really difficult is when sexuality, intimacy, and kind of wrong communications and sort of gets you know
Yeah. Before
confused,
you
you
go on
know.
further for that,
Yes.
before you dive into that, you started talking about you know, coaching people through relationships and learning that there was much more to it than traditional relationship therapy. You are an intuitive love coach.
Yeah.
Working with people like giants in the field like John Gray and Bruce Lipton, what would you say was the most single critical lesson that you learned from them or along your journey in general that you felt was missing from traditional relationship therapy?
Okay, let's say this way. The first notion is they're humans like you and me. Yeah. They have their stories to tell. And what I find very enlightening with both of these men, and both are really famous for what they bring into the world, is that they have no hiccups and no boundaries to tell their personal story of evolution, you know, of whatever happened to them and for them, and what they did and not did in order to learn and to become who they are now. You know? So they have stories to tell about making mistakes, breaking up, not being, you know, and I don't want to recall now the stories I know, you know, to both of them. Listen to the interviews I have conducted and read their books, then you will understand that they're incredibly, you know, transparent. And that's really what I had to learn the most, that I get incredibly comfortable to speak about my own evolution from a place of not feeling, you know, unworthy or wrong or, you know, and that's a long path to go. This is not very easily done, particularly when you just are gone through divorce and you survived cancer, and then that hits you, you know, with COVID, and then people say, oh, you know, by now you have given up being a love coach, isn't it? There's nothing much more you can do, isn't it? You have in a marriage, you and now you go to Bali, and what would you do in Bali being a love coach? And it was really a process of deep recollection. And in that very time, my relationship with John Gray and Mars Venus coaching was super important, because I did my coaching certificates on every level you can be a coach. I have, business coaching, executive coaching, relationship coaching, life coaching, love coaching. I can do it all. I have, through my business degree, also an understanding about numbers and running businesses, and I have run them all my adult life. So I'm just saying that the core learning is probably that everything is evolutionary, everything is as process and as progress, and that we go as teachers and as artists and as storytellers and as producers of our own art through phases, and that and each phase is like a chapter we tell in our life story. And if you really have the patience to let one life story chapter conclude with the same dignity how we allow a new chapter to begin, and then look years later into the summary of everything we have learned and included. And I think the wonderful opportunity is that we are not just picking the highlights, but we can see it all as one wholly beautiful, gift from God. This life has given us to be in service to ourselves, our higher evolution, and ultimately to others in the relationships we are guided to have and to be in. Yeah. And that's really where I'm coming from. Does this make sense, Andreena?
Yeah, it does. It does. Because even from the work and the teachings that you got while you were still a student, you were able to transform a lot of that into your intuitive therapy and
Yes.
intuitive
Yes.
and finding a new way
Mm.
to be able to
Mm.
coach students that you're now coaching. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so diving into your work, you've before in some of your interviews have emphasized intimate intelligence and quantum intimacy. For someone who is new to these concepts, how do you explain the difference between chemistry, which many people tend to chase, and resonance, which is what you teach?
Right. Okay. Let me just start with the word quantum for a moment, because I think it's highly overused and then also highly misunderstood. Okay. So quantum physics is not just something that is in scientific textbooks explained. An amazing teacher, and this is why I'm so intrigued about the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, is really, he explains this all very, very beautiful. In his book, The Honeymoon Effect, and the Honeymoon Effect book was actually written out of our interview. I believe I was the co-initiator for Bruce Lipton to write this book. The interview is done 2011. He published the book in February 2013. And I remember well, I walked in this interview with my cameraman from England into this beautiful house in Titirangi in New Zealand. And we had just got to know each other really well, his wife and him and us, as I brought my husband as well. And my first slogan was, you shared in this seminar the word honeymoon effect. And, I want to interview you on that, because this is quite, an interesting thing. And he said, the what? And I said, the honeymoon effect. And he said to me, the honeymoon effect. Of course. So what the honeymoon effect is, like we would say, an effect is something that is, you know, it's something vibrational. It's something that happens as an effect of something else. So quantum is vast, is big, is unphysical, is energy, is beyond what we know as real in the 3D world. So quantum is that 5D expansion. And I was very early, well, before people talked about 5D and made it all very, very well, before we had all these quantum, reality discussions. And, really this makes Bruce so special, because he was so early in our evolution in the early millennium years. giving us, with biology of belief and giving through his teaching, a lot of groundwork to understand, this is not this. We're not just done through our genes. There's something else, the environment, the energy, the vibration we are exposed to creates who we are and become. So when we talk about quantum intimacy, then, I say it very bluntly, I was very able to attract partnerships and relationships and things and people and situations well before I consciously knew that quantum was something I was interested in developing further. I thought I was just lucky. I got jobs in films. I attracted this. I edited a movie. I became an award-winning film editor, da, 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 da. And then I didn't know how to handle it because how did I possibly ask for? I had not really sussed what internally happened to manifest that. That was in my 20s and 30s. Nowadays, I know what's internally happening when you do manifest these things, because connecting with these quantum fields, this heart-mind coherence, this kind of dialogue between the energetic field and your inner being and the conscious and the unconscious, is a very powerful process. And really speaking about this being almost the foundation of my coaching is a very risky one, because people who do not know what it is will potentially not believe you that there is a way of manifesting anything in, from an, subtle, very vast place. There's a beautiful saying, marriages are made in heaven. When we talk about love and relationship, you can really truly manifest the love relationship of your highest purpose through being very open to your higher fields and in bringing the dots together, the particles of creation together, in making it the reality of your life and of your existence. So saying this, I'm feeling is really that quantum intimacy and intimate intelligence. Intimate intelligence is almost the pathway of, utilizing communication and interaction with another person to actually achieve quantum intimacy. Yeah? So we have to utilize conscious behavior and conscious communication in order to achieve and create the results we desire. At the same time, a lot of things are heavenly guided. A lot of things are happening not by default, but because something in the higher textbook of our evolution has already pre-programmed the connection to somebody we will meet, or look at Akasha records or astrology being translated into a pathway of energetic phases we go through in life. There is so many beautiful arts, I want to say, to apply to help this bigger chapter of love and relationship to be whole and concluded. And what is really true is that there is an invisible field where we can not just manifest it, but also heal and repair it. I have a philosophy going out of a relationship and saying love anyway. I had to love every of my husbands after for who they really were in my life. I love them, and I love still deeply every of these men in my life, because I know they're added in a one particular evolutionary phase to me being the lover I have become overall. And saying this, it's probably the way for the future. I would think that the love coaches I will train and Miguel will train, and those people who are part of our faculty will train, will be people who will have a very wide, expansive awareness of what they consciously can apply and tap into in order to help others to be guided, to have the love and relationships they really, really desire and are destined to experience. And also as a contribution for humanity, I think we deserve one relationship at a time. I mean, this is slogan of John Gray, I write these books to heal one relationship at a time. You can never, as a coach, say, I go out and help millions, if you can, and write good books and be in the media, and wonderful but if you just know that there is only one person or one couple or one family benefited from what you have contributed on a creative or on a sharing level, it's really beautiful for one's heart to know, because that is what makes it purposeful and what changes us to know that we create value and that we're here to do this work for the right reasons.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect segue into speaking about the Academy, the Global
Thank
Love
you.
Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about or thinking about the catalyst for the academy coming to life, you are transitioning from a successful one-on-one practice to building a legacy with the Global Love Coach Academy. Was there a specific moment or observation about the state of modern relationships that made you say, okay, I can't do this alone anymore. I need to train an army of
Yeah,
healers?
that certainly. I think that already started with Mars Venus. This is why I actually took John Gray's personal invitation to me to join his team and to become a Mars Venus coach. Um, I was already a well-developed coach when I entered Mars Venus field. And what it actually was, oh, here's a community surrounded around John Gray's work and gender intelligent philosophies that gave us tools and a platform. And I'm really hugely grateful for these few years having, learned and developed skills and being very close to them. And what I had to learn late last year, or when I actually this, had the download to do this academy, there was this pivotal moment, not just on a personal level, but also on, as you asked me, on an evolutionary level. I was I was observing Mars Venus coaches being very, very gender intelligent focused and taking certain things very much textbook like, and there's nothing wrong with this. Coaching can be very, very down to earth factual and very, very goal focused. And I got quite ill last year, actually. I stopped, being able to walk. I had issues with my legs and my knees, and I was really, really, really not well. And that was a moment of time where I realized I had to do something. It could not just be a vision. It had to be manifested. It had to become real. And to allow me to shift from being a coach well anchored in the practice of Mars Venus and being also a coach for love and relationship before, now really saying, no, you shift, you have to create something bigger here. And the awakening was really for me that the spiritual aspect and the quantum physical of quantum physics and all these metaphysical aspects of love and energy had to become part of my ultimate work. Okay, I had done so much in my earlier love coach years, and I experimented, and I have my very, very profound quantum intimacy process, taking people through a kind of a recession process where they go back well before their own conception and then go through different stations of their evolution, and then they do the ages 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, can be also 0 to 7, 7, 14, 14, 21. So it's some sort of depends where people evolutionary grow into. But I take this groundwork and then help them to see what is unhealed in their current love life, and then in releasing energy from these initial deep karmic, we call them cauldrons, we heal love relationships now. It's sometimes just one set of particles that sits somewhere in your energetic or etheric field that needs to be released in order to free yourself up to have different experiences. So I knew that my way of coaching and my philosophy and my deep um, spiritual as well as emotional integrated way of coaching had to be taught to future generations, because quite frankly, I do not know many people who integrated just like I do, or very few other healers or relationship healers I do know on this planet. And those who understand this very well don't declare themselves to be love coaches. There may be public speakers and writers for spiritual themes, and I could now name people like, I just met him in Bali a few weeks ago. Michael Beckwith is a very, very good example. He's incredibly knowledgeable when it comes to the whole concept of manifestation and evolution and human desires and bringing things into our life. The movie The Secret was a stepstone for all of us to understand more. How many of these teachers, have we made our coaches over the years? Joe Dispenza, Bob Proctor. I did a lot of work around Bob Proctor's coaching. I did a whole training to do a certain, evolutionary work in my coaching practice. So I just say there is a lot of good material out there, and yet really specifically applying it to love, intimacy, and sexuality is not evolved enough yet. And I think, being in my early 60s now, I know that it's my calling to awaken the world. I might not never ever be the perfect, highly acclaimed master coach. And that's not what this is about. But as long I can be the visionary and the initiator and the curator for other coaches, other teachers, other spiritual leaders on this planet and personal development gurus, to come together to bring all this knowledge into one big, beautiful, I don't want to say package, but into one beautiful quantum field of learning and teaching and practice, then I think the next generation, which I know is hungry for integrity, authenticity, and truth speaking. And you belong to that, Andreena. My kids are in their mid-late 20s, you are in your early 30s. Your generation is absolutely not willing to continue what the generation did that is between you and me. And that's these people who come out of divorced marriages, who are struggling. Lots and lots of people in their 40s and 50s nowadays do not know how to handle relationships. Divorce has become a normality. Open relationships are the answer to accepting the fact that another person is not willing to commit to you. But everybody struggles. Let's be polyamorous, but then be heavily disturbed by the fact that the man you feel passionately in love with is sleeping with other women, and then you feel damaged by that.
Yeah.
Look, Andreena, that doesn't work. It's like almost a counterproductive process to what evolution is actually offering us. And I think these post-war children, and I'm one of them, but I'm born 62. So I see this in many clients I coach now in there, in particular women. And that is the evolution I see as well since COVID. I'm not coaching much people in per se love anymore. My clients, and this is why I had professionals and friends and people who know me really well say, oh, it's about time that you give up being a love coach. Just be an executive coach to women in career and professional evolution. And that's what I do most. Since the last 2 or 3 years, I attract in my coaching practice almost only women who are in transitional stages, having raised children, having been in marriages, may or maybe still be in a committed relationship, and they want to do the shift from being in a professional position or role and suddenly have a creative awakening and want to fulfill their dream identity of bringing what they're passionate about into purpose and prosperity.
Mhm.
And a lot have, me not just as their, as their coach and as their business guide. They have me as their muse creatively. I muse a lot with people. And they have me as their intuitive, as a visionary, their psychic, to answer every single relationship. That the amount of business decisions of high value having done through my hands and intuition is unbelievable. Really high pitch numbers to very simple things. To should I employ this VA or this PA, or should I, go tomorrow to visit this business to do collaborations, or should I stay and not fly to the other city because it's not worth the time? Should I go on this date in the other country because I am invited on a distance relationship to engage deeper or not? These are questions I answer every day of my professional life, And I have to see, that those who work with me more consistently and more committed, they trust the answer, and often they are very evolved in their very own way and apply their own intuition in combination to my guidance. And then it's usually very fun because then it's not just me giving advice and being there as
Yeah.
their intuitive, but then it's also like a dialogue, what's happening here, what's actually evolving in this evolutionary process. And it's exciting. I can see
Nice.
that my role helping others to become who they want to become, and now helping others to become love coaches and being there for love and relationship. And the responses, I have not even a real marketing, promotional, uh, um, kind of process out. We're still building the website. We're still trying to get things done in the background, which should have been done 4, 8, 6 weeks ago, something like that. But then, we had a macro retrograde and we had some hiccups and we had some delays and we had a team member go because of certain background things we found out wouldn't work with our ethics and our ecology to the company. So would we replace that person? I suddenly decided, no, we can do it ourselves. Our team can do this. And now we as team begin to look for new ways and strategies. So it's all really, really exciting to actually have a few hiccups along the way, and then
Yeah.
learning as well how to see the blessing out of the delay, to actually be guided to the simplicity of what truthfully works, which is ultimately having dialogues with people about what they really dream about. And the moment I say, I begin to coach people, to become, who they really want to become, or I'm, creating an academy where I, as coach, create coaches that coach others in love and relationships. And the kind of eye-opening, oh my God, I want this, It's coming from every corner in the world, very unrelated to my actual endeavor to consciously marketing this project.
Yeah.
I have already a good number of people who are sincerely interested to follow the path and join us next year. So I think it's an exciting time. And what it shows me is, once again, that actually the ability to hold human rapport and human connection is the invitation to let somebody in, to trust me and my faculty and our team to do a great job of building something and co-creating something that
I
is not
love that.
just a school, but it will become a global network that hopefully is known in a few years as the one-stop shop, to be
Yeah.
trained to help love and relationship holistically.
I love that you touched on your team and the fact that there was someone that you had to let go because they weren't aligned. So as like you positioning yourself as the love leader, training a team of professionals, for the students enrolling in your academy and the aspiring coaches, what is the biggest internal shift that they must undergo before they are ready to hold space for someone else's heart and become the love coach that you want to train
That's
them?
a very, 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 very beautiful question. And I can actually answer this very simple. You have to be coachable yourself. You have to be willing to do the work. And
Mm,
sometimes, and I see this every day, I have coaches, I have people I work with. It's not that I'm, every week meeting somebody, working my personal stuff. I have, so many strategies. I do not need anybody for my personal evolution anymore. But professionally, oh yes, for many years I didn't do that, and now I have business advisors. I have business, people who inspire me, and I
mhm,
do ask questions, even so I could easily answer them myself. But it comes back to the dialogue. So answering your question, the biggest trait somebody needs to bring is to be willing to learn and to be willing to put him or herself out there, to let go of this old identity of making it something else. Make it be your journey first, and a willingness to connect with your heart and to heal relationships in your own energetic line and karmic and ancestral line, and then be available for others, really be available. It's not a job where you say, oh, some coaching schools sell it as, oh, coaching is really, very, very trendy and you can make a lot of money with it. That would be never my slogan. My slogan is, hey, let's get together. The world is hurt. There are women out there. Let's just look in television and TV and in social media and in YouTube right now. How many speak up about abuses, about things that happened to them early in their life? I was an actress, a dancer. I had these stories that what we are hearing now. I don't want to say the names now, not to mess with the algorithm, but I do know. I come from the entertainment and film and TV industry. I was a dancer and actress when I was an adolescent. I do know how easy it is to be invited by an authority you trust and think this person is interested in me because they honor me for the creative and the talented being I am. And I stopped being an actress because a director took me with a script to the fourth part of a play in one of Munich's most established theater houses. I had a contract with almost the Bavarian government under that because it was a government owned theater house. I had a contract with this director, did not uncover in all the auditions and all the pathway to lead me 6 weeks
mm,
into this stage where he said, and now I want you to take your clothes off and be bundled against a tree with bare breast and show yourself. I was 19 years old. I was already a mom who had breastfed my boy for around 6 or 8 months. And
mhm,
would I want to go naked on a theater stage just because he had suddenly the idea that, not mentioned in the script, it was a fun idea to create a kind of illusionary impression and bringing something into the mix, which that was the end of me being an actress, Andreena. That was, I walked out. I had to walk out. It was a long discussion with the leader of the theater house, with the director, with the composer. They all tried to keep me because they wanted me. And I said, I'm not taking, and the director wasn't negotiable. He wanted it the way done. He got his new actress. The theater play came out and it was booed out. And so the headline in the newspaper, in the top Munich newspaper, was, bare press and nothing behind. And I thought, like, oh my God, if that would have been my press, that would kill me. I would now go and kill myself for having been so exposed and so ashamed, for doing something, wanting to be a young actress so badly, and then selling my my physical self,
Yeah.
my beauty, I was gorgeous. There was nothing wrong with doing this or not doing this, but I decided not to. Nowadays, you have intimacy directors, and you are a filmmaker, so you will understand where I'm coming from. In theater, you call them intimacy directors. In television and film, you call them intimacy coordinators. All right. There's a whole new generation of people in film, television, and the arts who become intimacy directors and coordinators because the world of art, and it brings us almost back to the beginning of your beautiful question about stories and film and television and how it had actually, completed me in my journey as a love coach. That's still one of my biggest other roles I want to fulfill beyond the academy in doing this work as I already started studying. So I haven't concluded this training yet because it's between America and Bali. And for the later chapters, you have to have mentors into film and television and theater in the country that actually educates and certifies and qualifies. And that's mainly in Europe and the USA at the moment. But I do know, Andreena, that, the arts and the entertainment industry and the visibility of so many women and men that come, a man too, it's not just the women. There's so many stories told and to be told of misconduct, unethical behavior, misuse of power and authority in relationships, particularly professionally, misleading. And it's so vast. And this alone could make a whole professional path for me. But meanwhile, I decided I want to build this school, this academy, this cold room in beautiful Bali in the nestle of Uluwatu's bush, looking out to the ocean, the Indonesian Ocean. I want people to dive into this process of, I have already people from Canada, from Europe, from Australia, New Zealand, who are willing to come to be in this training and go back into their respective home countries to become lighthouses for this work to crawl over the planet. I call it the Global Love Coach Academy for the simple reason that we will train all over the planet over the next few years. Wherever a new group is ready to see me and Miguel to train them, we'll travel and train them. For now, it will need to be on site. We don't do any online trainings. We will do online integration and mentoring for those who are qualified, but we will not train people online. And that's the big difference to everything else that has developed and evolved through COVID and this big evolution that you can do it all online and you can do it all at home. No, you can't practice relationships on your computer alone at home. You need to be in a quantum field of real physical, emotional interaction. And I'm not talking about sex or intimacy. That's not what we teach. I'm not a tantric school. I'm not a sacred sexual, practitioner teaching others. Sexuality is a huge part of our communication, but nothing oversteps any boundaries or agreements people make with one another in this space. And that's super important. And the International Coaching Federation, being represented by Miguel, being currently the president of the faculty for ICF in Belgium, is a huge gift. He is Bali, Bali resident for many years, currently situated in Europe. But he will come next year and build his academy with me for whatever and to wherever we are called to develop it. And it's very exciting because having our home in Bali, our home base, and conduct most of our first intakes and modules here for people to be certified, but then seeing where the calling is leading us is actually almost like mystical. There's no plan. All we know is that the world is our oyster, and we just allow everybody to come and to participate in the beautiful process.
Nice. Before you, because I know there's so much for you to share, but I love how you're like intuitively going into my next questions. So the question that I had that you touched on, I would like you to expand more into it. In this digital world where especially coaching, so much of it is done digitally and online, why was it non-negotiable for you and your partners to anchor the certification process in a physical face-to-face space and gathering, and why specifically Bali?
Yeah, two things. I think from previous education, I became a homeopath in in a school face to face. I did neurolinguistic programming training, the practitioner and the master prac all life, particularly these schools, where you deal with energy and with particular energetic processes and pathways that allow, a quantum field to be in polarity, like two people sitting with one another, or try it. Yes, we can imaginative heavenly in a quantum. The beauty that really COVID gave us is that we learned to create these quantum fields with the best of our abilities. But I want to bring it back to the human source because it is ultimately a heart experience, and the heart to heart connection in a room is so precious and so much more than just a three-dimensional experience, So I do want people to have that opportunity to play full out and feel, while this is happening, incredibly held and safe and guided and protected. That's really why we're doing it. Online is very hard to predict what energetically happens in the background with somebody who switches off soon and walks
Right.
out and has just gone through something that they cannot handle. And when you look at lots and lots of, you know, um, tantra is beautiful. Sacred sexuality is holy when you experience it ethically with somebody you really, really trust and have a deep connection to. But there is lots of misguidance. Bali is also known as a mecca for these kind of workshops and experiences where people do that. And there's nothing wrong. If this is what's your calling, please experience it. There are teachers out there from all over the world who offer you, heightened sexuality, tantric experiences. And for those who teach it well, thank you for fulfilling the role of doing that because it is needed in the world. I totally agree with that. And yet, I'm not one of those. I had really, really discovered that in the first 3 or 4 years of my love coaching experience, being invited to train in it, to become lover of a polyamorous group of sacred sexual healers. I declined in being part of it. I had all these invitations, Andreena. I know it from 15, 20 years ago. And I know that in my pathway with the story my life has told and the healing I had to do and the wounding I had to overcome, that safety and protection of my own energetic field and my sexuality and my sensuality be held sacredly was number one. And to learn that to honor this is something that I carry deeply into my, coaching practice. Why Bali? Bali is on an energetic line on this planet that is very, very, very heart-centered. Often people say, Indonesia, Bali is almost the heart chakra of planet Earth. I know there are other places on the other side of the world, like Santa Fe and, New Mexico, and there's beautiful, on that side. I know there's very, very, very powerful places as well. But here, from an Australasian perspective and being the last 30, 35 years as a New Zealander, situated between Bali and New Zealand, I know that this is the closest power place to my home, New Zealand, to perform that level of deep processes that I wish to perform. And I love Bali culture. I love, the sacredness. And it has also its challenging sides, but no, every indigenous culture has that. And if you learn about it and if you honor it and respect it and work with the locals really in an honorable way, then it makes really, really all sense that you can create that safe haven for people to have a very, very transformational, deep experience. We change lives. When you come to this training, you will be not the same person when you come home um, to your actual, home base, wherever you live in the world. So yes, I hope this answers your questions.
Yes, it does. It makes it even more alluring to want to come to do this in
Thank
person.
you.
Amazing. So the last question I have, so when it comes to the legacy you want to leave behind, the vision for GLCA, when you 10 years from now, when you look back at the Global Love Coaching Academy, sorry, no, yeah, the Global Love Coach
Yeah.
Academy, what impact do you hope this institution will have on a global statistic of loneliness?
Particularly to loneliness, if I may say, this subject of loneliness is actually a super important one because, you know, what's happening is that we all almost are conditioned to get comfortable with loneliness and aloneness. And aloneness is different,
Yeah.
I know aloneness really well, but I'm not entertaining loneliness anymore. So being single in my age, I know really to honor what it means to have my own, you know, freedom and ability to choose my way of living and loving as well.
Mm.
But I want to come to your question, particularly in regards to the vision. 10 years from now, I really see that at least in 3 or 4 continents, if not more, we have faculties, we have sincere people representing what I represent myself at the moment, being leaders, love leaders who hold local academies and teach and train love coaches there. So the vision is really that it's something we co-create together and I will also learn from other coaches. It's not just my philosophy and Miguel's ICF standards, ethics, and communication we are bringing in. There's so much more. I'm in discussion with people doing, particularly belief changing and mental emotional techniques. I'm in discussion with very, very high evolved, doctors in psychotherapy, having years and years of trauma therapy experience. Why? The conversation has to happen in our field. Even so, we are not training psychotherapists and therapists per se. Therapy and coaching are 2 separate things. But many of us have been therapists in other modalities, which I very much so. And also we have been artists or so I love to include anybody's background into their own work as love coach, arts practitioners and dancers can do dance therapy, hands-on therapy with love coaching. If you have somebody you therapeutically guide through a process of healing and have coaching tools in communication, then good on you. All the ICF is saying, the International Coaching Federation, do not coach or teach something you have no knowledge of and then sell it as something you think it's sellable because you are a coach. So here's a very important part. Coaching practices are very, very defined in what they do and offer and not do and not offer. Yeah. And this is why the boundaries of the ICF, um, you know, protection is so valid and so important, particularly for those of us who had experiences like I shared before, the story of a young actress, having all these creative talents and having to step back and realizing with 19 years, oh, if I do this once more, then all people want is me being,
Yeah.
the play tool or the woman they can, invite for dinner and then take home. And that
Yeah.
happened to me, and did I do it actively? I quite honestly cannot remember that I was as such abused that it ended up in a situation me being fully sexually molested. But even just the realization, made me, being the girl behind the curtain, become an editor. Going in an editing room in olden days and having film stripes and being in the darkness, like I'm here now with my ring light and sit here in my studio. That did me do well. I tell you, Andreena, when you are a filmmaker, the moment you go into silence and into privacy to be really, really heavily involved in the creation of a movie, that suited me so much better than being out there and being, constantly, you know, kind of triggered in the sense of saying, "Oh, you're beautiful, hey." And
Mhm.
so that's why I married early. This is why I declared I'm a mom early. This is why I stayed always a little bit more overweight and never was really, really slim, because I thought, oh, that helps me too. Till I later figured out that that's not necessary anymore. Just love your body as it is. But you understand the body image, the identity we take on in order to protect ourselves from not being hurt in the most valuable and most deeply precious and creative parts of ourselves is such a deep dialogue. And I do really wish that I had a conversation with my daughter, not just last week. She visited me in Bali, and she is wanting to become a coach. She's a future life and coach and writer, and she's in her late 20s and really, really, really has this vision of sharing her inspiration with the world. And she said, "Look, we are fed up. Our generation wants to get the job done. We cannot hang on and hang on and hang on to all these wounds you project back to us from your post Second World War upbringings, your mothers and grandmothers. We need to stop this because our generation deserves to have committed relationships that are sealed and happy and safe. And also, we want to have time for living life productively and not having to spend too much in, psychological treatment or in mental health issue, evolved processes, or mental health is such a big part of what we are talking about, and yet we are training coaches and not mental health practitioners. But the amount of people coming into my coaching practice as my clients having mental health symptoms and issues and portray particular, scenarios that easily could be dimmed down with medication, but they choose, they don't want to choose the medication and the psychiatric care or whatever they, be offered by another set of practitioners. Now they want to have a future focused and inspiring and creative way of having choices to create the future, the reality, the relationships, and the purpose for, expression in life they really, really feel called to. And this is what I'm wanting to communicate over time as well. We can't replace doctors and mental health professionals who really, really fulfill a very, very important role in society. But we can be practitioners of love and communication to help people to understand themselves better and to be really, really out there to see what they can do better in their own abilities, in their own lives, in their own resources they carry or we carry in us, to make life so much more livable and joyous.
I love that. Wow, you have quite the mission ahead of you. And I definitely see the vision and the legacy and the impact that could have on the world globally. And it's definitely needed as we shift from, like, the old paradigm of, hustle, bustle, money, 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 into authenticity and love and just, just who are you as a person, that like bringing out the genuine person within, I feel like your work it's necessary, and it's necessary to help
And
as
what
many.
I'm most excited about, that you will be the person doing the documentary in the background of this evolution with me. So I'm really excited to see you back in Bali in a couple of months and restarting holding the camera very, very close to everything we are developing here. And that
Yeah.
will be a story in itself, that the evolution of this work. And let's wait and see what's created here, you know. That's really something I learned so much. I have no expectation, or, you know, as much you want to be outcome and result and goal focused in coaching, we also need to let, you know, fate and love in life do its own
Yeah.
thing. You know, we need to be
Precisely.
willing to let, you know, the creative force, you know, God's
Mhm.
language, you know, the universal power be part of this wonderful, wonderful process.
Precisely. Precisely. Thank you so much, Adrian. I really enjoyed
Thank
this.
you, Andreena.